The Browns get a ugly but necessary win against the Cincinnati Bengals this week. But what did this team do better? What did they do worse? Should we be excited moving forward? Are they going to beat the Arizona Cardinals? And do they have a real shot at the playoffs? Well, for that and more, stay tuned. All right, so there are a few kind of headlines, drama that I want to bring up or talk about before we really get into the meat of this video. Okay, so the Browns won ugly. And I think winning in a division ugly really isn't that big of a deal. And at this point, we know what the Browns have been for this season. And for this team this year, they are fortunate to get a win. So I don't think we're in the position yet as a franchise or as a team or as a fan base where we could be choosy over these wins like we thought we were going to be at the beginning of the season. Right now, they just need to grind out however they can. But let's talk about the first thing to drop this morning is the OBJ drama saying in the Glazer report, which is reputable, that he's been saying to teams to come get him. Now, I question this report not of its authenticity, but of its genuineness, because I do wonder if what he said was taken out of context or meant to mean something else and was taken a different way, or if what he said has happened as frequently as it was implied in the report, because the media has been digging for something about Odell Beckham since he arrived in Cleveland. I find it hard to believe that he's just been openly saying this for weeks to come get him, and that it's just now seeing the light of day at the end of the season. It doesn't seem like something like that would fly under the radar once, twice, or any times with Odell Beckham. So the fact that to believe this report, you would have to believe that this has been flying under the radar for the last 3 months when nothing Odell Beckham has said or done, whether it's in public or in private, has flown under the radar, is kind of hard to believe. And it makes me believe that this report isn't 100% genuine. It isn't 100% honest. It may have been said, but in a different context. I don't know. I don't really put a lot of weight into it. And at the end of the day, Odell Beckham's under contract with the Cleveland Browns for the next 3 years. So I don't get why people are trying to force this to be the storyline that it's not. The thing with the sports hernia and that not being handled correctly, and the quarterback coming out, Baker Mayfield coming out and saying that that wasn't handled correctly, that's significant. That is a issue. Injuries have been a weird problem this season. We've all noticed it with the injury report throughout the season. Demarius Randall getting a concussion he claims he never had. Denzel and Greedy both being injured at the same time. Things that I attributed to Freddie Kitchens, but this also might be just bad medical staff going on, and they're just diagnosing these problems at the same time rather than they're happening at odd times, which is questionable. And the Browns, while the city of Cleveland itself has a great reputation for its medical side of things, the Browns organization has not. I remember in 2008 where they had the staph infection scares. It took out LaCharles Bentley and Joe Jaravish's career, both of their careers. They're both hometown guys. They both had to sue their hometown teams because their hometown team's medical staff was incompetent. So that's significant. I really hope that in the offseason, if that was truly an issue, like it does have enough evidence to indicate that it is that the organization will clean house and fix the issue there with the medical staff. But all that aside, let's talk about the game, and let's talk about the quarterback. Baker Mayfield had a bad game today. Statistically, it was awful. I don't think if you watch the game, it came off as awful as it looks on paper. Baker Mayfield, 11 of 24, 1 rushing touchdown, 2 interceptions. I don't think he came off as bad, and he was coming off an injury, but honestly, it really wasn't an excuse to be as statistically bad as that. So I'm not even going to really give him that. Quarterback rating of 30, that's not acceptable. whether you're hurt or not. If you're on the field and you're the starting quarterback, you got to do better than the 30 QBR, in my opinion. So Baker Mayfield did not have a great game, did not have a good game. He definitely had a bad game. The degree of bad depends on whether you watched the game or just looked at the stats, because he didn't play terribly. The 2 interceptions he had, they didn't kill the Browns, so it ended up not being that big of a deal. But, again, still not great football. He's going to have a chance to bounce back against the Arizona Cardinals, who are one of the worst secondaries in football. So that is a fortunate thing for Baker going into the Baltimore game. But this week, not a good showing. And it does make you worry about what he could do in the Baltimore game. This defensive line, man, not great. Not great what I saw from this defensive line. They technically were statistically better. I think last week they had 1 sack and 1.5 tackles for loss. This week they had 2 sacks and 2 tackles for loss. So improvement. But they played a worse offensive line this week than they played last week. So not improvement. Not good at all. Getting no push. The Bengals have one of the worst offensive lines in football, and you got no push. Andy Dalton was getting used to having the ball for 5 seconds. Absolutely awful. I don't know if Olivier Vernon played a significant amount of snaps. I don't remember him being out there, and if he did, he didn't make that much of an impact. But somebody's got to step up. Sheldon Richardson, Larry Ogunjobi, Olivier Vernon, somebody's got to step up. They're all paid the big boy, well, except for Larry Ogunjobi, but the other 2 are paid the big boy money to step up in these situations, and they're making Myles Garrett look like the defensive player of the year with how terrible this defensive line has been with him absent from it. Just absolutely abysmal, awful. And if they play like this next week in Arizona, they're going to get shredded. I'm just going to predict that here. If they play like this next week, they're going to get shredded. Kyler Murray is going to have a career game against the Browns. If this Browns defensive line does not get penetration, does not play better, they have no hope in Arizona next week. And that's sad to say because Arizona's not that great of a team, but they're a much more competent passing attack than the Bengals. And boy, are there going to be points that Andy Dalton left on the board that I don't think Kyler Murray is. So just they got to figure it out there. They got to either put Sione Takitaki at the edge. They got to find a way to get pressure. And as the days go on, as they try to replace guys, it makes less and less sense that Jannard Avery was not given a chance to be a contributing member of this team and was traded away. Now, I don't know what was going on behind the scenes, but right now it really seems like you could use somebody who could get to the quarterback, and Jannard Avery seemed like that guy who can get to the quarterback. But I digress with that. So that's kind of a mark on John Dorsey. The other one is that the run defense was terrible today, especially on the edge. Joe Mixon had a lot of yards today, and I'm not trying to throw shade at Joe Mixon. I wasn't impressed with Joe Mixon. It has nothing to do with him. It's just that all of his yards just came so easy. They were uncontested open yards. Giovanni Bernard were in there, he would have got the same amount of yards that Joe Mixon had. They were uncontested, untouched. A lot of the times, most of the times when Joe Mixon ran the ball, wasn't even touched by a defensive lineman before he got to the second level. Just atrocious play on the defensive line. Just terrible. This defensive line made no impact in the game today. And luckily, Andy Dalton and the Bengals offense were incompetent enough to allow you to get away from it. But this was not good. The secondary gets exposed when the defensive line cannot penetrate like this. A lot of open receivers. Again, I was at this game. I see the whole field when I'm at the game. A lot of open receivers that just Andy Dalton did not hit today. A more competent quarterback like Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson are going to hit those targets and are going to kill the Browns. So this defensive line does not play better, does not get pressure, does not look like a competent NFL defensive line soon. This team is in serious trouble for the next 3 weeks because those are all 3 teams, because you play the Bengals again, you play the Cardinals, and you play the Baltimore Ravens. These are all 3 teams you cannot afford to lose to, one, because you have to win out to have a chance at the playoffs. And then also, these are all 3 teams that you got to create pressure to slow down that offense. And right now, the Browns are probably, if we looked at this on a week-by-week basis for the last 2 weeks, the worst at creating pressure since Myles Garrett has not been here. And that's not good. Now let's talk about Freddie Kitchens. Freddie Kitchens, I'm not going to blow this up because the Browns won this game and at no point did I feel like this game was in jeopardy for the Cleveland Browns. So I'm not going to blow this up. I'm not going to yell at Freddie. I'm not going to call for his job after he won a division game. But I am going to say that a lot of the stuff that drives me crazy about Freddie Kitchens came back. It had gone away for a few weeks, but it came back. Going away from the run game inexplicably. Yes, that came back. There was no reason. I felt like last week in the second half, there was a reason. There's a reason they went away from the run. I don't agree with it completely, but I could see the logic in it, and I can understand the choice not to, although I thought it was the wrong choice. So that's not something I'm going to flip my lid about. This week, going away from the run, having 6 carries in the first half for Nick Chubb, just mind-bogglingly dumb. That's not smart play calling. It just seems like it went away from him. It didn't seem like a active choice, especially with the passing game not connecting with the consistency that it normally does. But, I'll give Freddie Kitchens credit. One, he won the game. And two, the other decisions that drive me crazy, I feel like are more critical to wins and losses than his play calling can be ultimately. They weren't there. I mean, like he wasn't terrible. He just did a few things that drive me crazy. So, he won the game. I'm not going to jump down his throat, but I'm going to acknowledge he did not have his best game as a head coach. And I think the reality with the run game is I don't think Kareem Hunt needs a lot more carries than he gets right now. I think he gets enough, to be honest with you. I think Nick Chubb needs more carries, and I think Kareem Hunt just needs a few more targets. I think that would be a good recipe for this offense. It'll allow you to get the ball to Jarvis, allow you to take advantage of what you can with Odell, and it allow Kareem Hunt to stay dangerous, elusive, and still mysterious in what he's going to do. And then Nick Chubb, I think he is your bell cow, your every down back. I think the bulk of the carries, 75% of carries, do need to go to Nick Chubb. So I don't think Kareem Hunt necessarily needs more carries. I just think he probably needs more targets in the pass game if you're going to do so much passing. Another note, and I'm getting some positive stuff. Kendall Lamb played right tackle today. Browns gave up 1 sack today. Good job, Kendall Lamb. Good job, Greg Robinson. Good job, Browns offensive line, because this Bengals defensive line was not a pushover. And the Browns offensive line, give them credit, did their thing. Maybe keep Kendall Lamb in there as right tackle more often. That might be a good thing for the Cleveland Browns. It looks like he did a better job than Chris Hubbard. So happy to report I'm not frustrated with the offensive line today. Some of the play calling frustrated me, yes. Baker Mayfield did not have a great game, yes. But Nick Chubb made the big plays when he needed to. Jarvis Landry has been one of the most reliable, good hands, good players in the NFL that there is. So congrats to Jarvis. He's going to break 1,000 yards relatively soon with 3 games left to go. So he might even break, 1,100, 1,200 yards this season. So that's big for Jarvis. Now, last week, I set out some win criteria for each team. And for the Bengals, I said that their win criteria was going to be they have to get to Baker Mayfield 4+ times. They did not do that. They had to score early. They did not score touchdowns early. I think they got a field goal early, but they did not score touchdowns early, not take advantage of some opportunities they had. They fell behind, and they weren't able to use Joe Mixon as much in the second half as they wanted to. They kept Odell and Jarvis Landry under 100 yards, so they did do that. And Carlos Dunlap did not have a crazy day. I think he had 1 sack, but he did not have the crazy 3-3 day that he had last week. And for the Browns, I said return to play action pass. Hey, Good job, Freddie Kitchens. Went back to the play action pass. Went back to it a bunch in this game. I was really happy to see that. I would honestly like to see it just a little bit more, but that's just me being somebody who loves the play action pass with the personnel that the Browns have. But good job with the play action pass. I thought that they did a good amount of that. Get Nick Chubb and Hunt on the edge early. No, did not do that early. They did do it late, but early, no, they did not do that. They make big plays and keep mistakes down. They had more mistakes than they had last week. This week, they had a lot more turnovers and more mistakes than they did this last week than they did this week. So they actually did worse in a win in that. But they did make the big plays. Nick Chubb with the big run down the field. Jarvis Landry with the big catch. Even Odell had a pretty nice catch. They made those big plays, and I'll take the mistakes as long as they make the big plays. And it looks like they were able to make those more consistently, and also get at least twice the penetration as last week. Yeah, they were slightly better. They weren't notably better, so I'm not going to give them that. So the Browns won a game where they had to play sloppy. They didn't play as good as they knew they could play, or as they have played earlier in the season. And they got the win here. Now, one other quick note is I want to talk about the officiating. Some of the worst officiating I've seen. Some of the oddest challenges. The David Njoku fumble thing that happened in the first quarter. I saw that in the stadium, and I went home and watched it on TV, and it still made absolutely no sense how that got upheld after a review. It looked like a pretty clear that he was down with possession of the ball. That didn't make any sense to me. There was a Jarvis Landry catch play that I thought was a catch. They ruled it as a catch on the field, and then 5 minutes later, they decided it's not a catch. And then like 35, 40 seconds later, before the Browns are about to snap the ball, they decide to say it was not a catch. And then the Browns have to challenge that it was a catch. And then they said it wasn't a catch, even though it looked pretty clearly like a catch. Didn't make sense there. And even at the end of the game, where the Browns, where Baker Mayfield threw the one interception, but then even at the end of the game, for things that went for the Browns, where Baker Mayfield threw the one interception, and they went back and decided that it was pass interference on the interception, so the interception did not count, but it was pretty blatant pass. It was just like odd things going on with this officiating staff for both teams. I don't think it was rigged either way. I think it was just odd for both teams, and I thought that really was head scratching. I don't know what this officiating crew's history is, but it was just really head scratching watching that in the stadium. And then when I got back and watched the game, the television broadcast. And also the last thing was that there was the Jarvis Landry play where it was a pretty nice kind of like slip screen, but instead of it was a fake slip screen to the running back, and then it was an inside toss kind of a play to Jarvis Landry. He ended up getting like 40 yards on it, and they just let Zach Taylor throw a challenge flag, like without indicating what he was challenging, and that was just odd to me. I've never seen that in an NFL game, where you're allowed to challenge without indicating what you're challenging. They literally said, the Bengals are challenging a completed pass for 40 yards with no flags. Andy Dalton got intentional grounding on like the 7-yard line when he threw a ball at the back of the end zone. I just thought that was weird. Maybe I need to watch that back again, because it was like, how could somebody not be within 15 yards when the entire radius of the field at that point is 15 yards? It didn't make sense to me, a lot of stuff that happened with the officiating. But that is just a note for the NFL, if anybody from the NFL ever cares to listen to me, that the officiating was weird for both sides, and that there's something going on with that officiating crew. I hope they don't call any playoff games or games of significance later on in the season. But the Browns do get the big win. They do get the win that they need. And where does this put them as far as it comes to playoff talks? Well, right now I think the Browns are the 8th seed in a hypothetical playoff race. So they're behind the Titans, behind the Bills, and behind the Pittsburgh Steelers. At this point with Pittsburgh, unless they lose out completely and go 8-8, you're not catching them and surpassing them. And with the way that their schedule is, you're not going to catch Pittsburgh and surpass them. So I think at this point, it's a lost cause trying to catch Pittsburgh and replace them. I think the better idea for the Browns is to try to be 9-7 with Buffalo, who at worst can go 9-7. So Buffalo would have to lose out. The Titans would have to lose 2 of their last 3, which is possible because they played the Texans twice. And then, of course, the Browns would have to win out, beat Baltimore, and beat Cincinnati and Arizona, which, isn't the most likely scenario, but it's definitely a realistic scenario for the Browns to get in. So the playoff picture is not completely dead. There's not too many hypotheticals that you have to wait to go in. The Browns are only behind one other team in the playoff race. So it's definitely doable. But will it happen? That remains to be seen. The Browns just have to continue to win games and see what happens as far as that goes. But that is it for this week's video. If you let me know in the comment section what you think about this game. Do you think that this game was a good indicator, or are you just happy to take the win like I am? I'm just happy to take the win. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you like what I do here, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload. And thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.